What if I told you that the harder you try to be sociable, the closer you are to becoming weak, clumsy, and easy to manipulate? This is not an exaggeration or a cheap provocation. It's the inevitable consequence of living dependent on stares, applause, and the damned "what will they say?" Every time you soften your words so as not to make someone uncomfortable, you tear off a piece of your lucidity. Every time you pretend to agree just so you're not left out, you steal a fragment of your authenticity. And every time you mold yourself to fit into a group, what dies is not your ability to think, but your courage to do so. The world applauds you when you become a docile copy, but what it doesn't tell you is that in that process, you stop having your own strength. You think you're gaining acceptance, when in reality what you're losing is character. And the worst, the most devastating thing is that you end up celebrating your own domestication as if it were success. They applaud you because you look like them, because you don't bother, because you don't make anyone uncomfortable. And you, convinced that this is belonging, hand over your voice as someone hands over their soul in exchange for a crumb of approval. Do you know what Diogenes thought? That true stupidity wasn't lacking intelligence, but voluntarily renouncing it out of fear of being alone. It wasn't about shining in the middle of the crowd, but about holding on to your truth, even if the whole crowd turned its back on you. And this is where the most uncomfortable message hides. The more you depend on the group, the less you own yourself. The more you seek to fit in, the easier it is to manipulate you. And in that game, the only thing you end up losing is your intellectual freedom. Stay with me, because at the end of this video, you're going to see what almost nobody dares to accept. That loneliness is not your enemy. It's your refuge, your laboratory, the only space where you recover the edge of your mind. You're going to understand why silence, the one you fear so much, can return to you a strength that no crowd will ever be able to give you. The most dangerous trap of excessive sociability is not in parties, nor in groups, nor in fake smiles. It's in something much deeper, in how it alters your way of thinking without you realizing it. Because when you live surrounded by people, your mind starts to work like a mirror. You no longer think what you truly believe. You think what others expect you to say. You don't feel what you truly feel. You feel what you think you should feel so as not to seem strange. And the most unsettling thing is that there comes a point when you no longer know how to distinguish which is your voice and which is the voice you've fabricated so they'll accept you. Look at the details. When you're alone and think about something, your ideas may flow with rawness, even with a certain violence. But when you try to say that same thought in front of a group, you edit it, soften it, mutilate it. And that's where the silent crime happens. Your authenticity is murdered by your fear of being left out. Little by little, you stop having your own thoughts. You no longer think to understand, you think to please. You no longer feel to live, you feel to fit in. And at that point, you're no longer you. You're a version manufactured by the demands of others. What Diogenes understood, and which today seems almost blasphemous, is that the mind loses its edge when it becomes accustomed to being surrounded. The crowd doesn't demand clarity from you. It demands obedience. It doesn't want you to think with strength. It wants you to think softly. And you, seeking to be accepted, hand yourself over to that softness which at first seems like comfort, but is actually a slow poison. Lucidity rusts when kept in social boxes. Here's where it becomes truly unsettling. The more sociable you are, the weaker your capacity becomes to confront your own life. Because the crowd is an anesthetic. Among laughter, empty conversations, and quick validations, you manage never to face the mirror. And so, life turns into a continuous distraction. You surround yourself with noise so as not to hear your silence. You surround yourself with faces so as not to look at your own. You think you're living, but in reality, you're only avoiding living for real. Do you want a brutal example? Watch any person who cannot stand being alone even for 10 minutes. Always with music, with their phone, with someone next to them, with the TV on. Not because they enjoy all that, but because they fear what they might find if silence catches them. And here lies the key point. Loneliness is not emptiness. It's the most honest mirror that exists. Whoever flees from it flees from themselves. Diogenes knew it. That's why he despised social rituals. That's why he spat on appearances. He wasn't a marginal madman. He was someone who understood the most dangerous mechanic of the human mind, that we seek company not out of love for others, but out of fear of ourselves. And here comes the question that will make you uncomfortable for days. How much of what you do is authentic, and how much is just a strategy not to feel alone? The group gives you warmth, yes, but it also robs you of fire. And the more you depend on that borrowed warmth, the more incapable you become of lighting your own flame. That's why true strength isn't in being accepted by everyone, but in holding yourself up even when no one applauds. And that, painful as it is, means learning to be alone without falling apart. Don't forget this. What society calls being sociable is often just an elegant way of being a slave. The darkest part of this dependence on social approval is that it not only transforms what you think, but deforms what you're capable of perceiving. When you get used to living under others' gaze, your perception of reality stops being direct and becomes a constant reinterpretation of what they might think. Your life stops being made of experiences and becomes a theater of appearances. And here's the disturbing detail. When you see the world through others' eyes, you lose your own. It's as if your eyes go dark and you lend your vision to a crowd that will never look out for you. Have you noticed how fear of public judgment even changes your memory? Think about that awkward moment when you said something clumsy, a phrase that still torments you today. In your head, that scene repeats with unbearable drama, as if everyone were remembering every word. But if you were honest, you'd know that no one remembers. No one has it in mind, because most people are too busy trying to hold up their own facade. The paradox is that we carry memories others have already forgotten, and those memories act like invisible chains that make us obey a court that no longer even exists. That social court, that jury that never actually sits in front of you but that you imagine at all times, is the cruelest mechanism of human domestication. Diogenes understood it. Society's power isn't in written laws or external customs, but in that voice you yourself install in your head to judge you every time you do something different. It's like a psychological parasite that no longer needs to be outside to control you because it has infiltrated your interior. And that is the stupidity he referred to. Not the lack of intelligence, but the voluntary surrender of the mind to the echo of the group. Now I want you to imagine something. A world without spectators. No one watching, no one judging, no one applauding. Only you. What would you do differently? What things would you say that you never dare to say? What dreams would you take up again without fear of mockery? The answer to those questions is, in reality, your authentic life. Everything else is noise, a stage set you built to survive, not to live. But because you've spent so much time inside that theater, you don't even remember what your true voice sounds like anymore. The problem is that we've confused company with value. We believe that being surrounded gives us strength, when in reality it's the opposite. The more people you need around to feel valid, the emptier you are inside. What society calls charisma is often nothing more than an ability to hide insecurities under a disguise of friendliness. And people applaud it, of course, because everyone needs the same disguise. But behind every forced smile is a brutal fear. The fear of being invisible, of not mattering, of being irrelevant. And here I want you to pay attention because this hurts. The obsession with being relevant is what chains you the most. There's no greater slavery than living tied to the desire to be remembered, approved of, commented on. Do you know why? Because the moment someone ignores you, you feel like you're falling apart. You become so used to applause that when it's missing, you think you've disappeared. But it's not that you've disappeared. It's that you never learned to stand without spectators. The interesting thing is that this vulnerability is precisely what others use to manipulate you. Whoever knows you depend on their approval holds your will in their hands. A single gesture of disapproval, a look of disdain, and you're already changing your behavior to win back their smile. That's the most subtle form of social control. Not physical chains, not shackles, but the emotional blackmail of acceptance. The most docile slave is not the one who fears punishment, but the one who fears not being loved. That's why Diogenes was so radical, not because he enjoyed marginalization, but because he understood that only the one who dares to lose everything in front of the group can truly be free. As long as you care about others' opinions, they will hold the key to your mind. And that key becomes a weapon anyone can use against you. A boss, a partner, a friend, even a stranger on the internet. One word is enough to break you because you never learned to hold yourself up alone. Today's society takes it to the extreme. We live intoxicated by social networks that operate exactly under this mechanism. A permanent showcase where we display edited versions of ourselves and wait for immediate rewards in the form of approval. Likes, comments, followers. Validation that seems sweet but acts like a drug. You need more and more to feel the same. And when it's missing, you fall into an unbearable void. And the worst, the image you created for them you can no longer abandon because it's your prison. You become the guardian of an identity that doesn't even represent you. The question is, how much longer are you going to keep selling your freedom for a pat on the back? How many more times are you going to repeat what others want to hear while your true voice rots in silence? Because that's the great tragedy. It's not that you don't have your own thought. It's that you silence it every day until it begins to die. And when you lose it completely, you won't even notice that it's no longer you who's thinking, but the crowd thinking in your place. Now, listen carefully, because here comes the part you won't want to accept. The more you need to be approved, the smaller you'll become inside. Your fear will be so great that any word will be able to bring you down. But if you dare to be alone, if you endure the vertigo of your own company, something incredible happens. You recover your strength. You discover that you don't need anyone to validate you, that your voice has weight even if no one hears it, that your life has meaning even if no one applauds it. That's true intellectual freedom. Speaking without asking permission, thinking without censorship, feeling without makeup. The crowd will keep shouting, of course. They'll keep trying to drag you down to their level because your independence wounds them, reminds them of what they didn't dare to be. But at that moment, you'll no longer be a slave. You'll have understood the lesson that very few accept. Loneliness is not the end, it's the beginning. The beginning of a life where you're no longer a puppet of applause, but owner of your silence and your truth. And there, right there, is when fear turns into power. Because when you learn to live without anyone's approval, there's no chain capable of holding you anymore. And here is where everything gets truly serious. If you've come this far, it means that inside you there's a part that's already tired of being a reflection, that suspects life can't be reduced to being applauded or criticized as if you were an actor on a stage. It means your mind is already looking for a crack to escape from the crowd. And that crack is dangerous because once you see it, you'll no longer be able to pretend it doesn't exist. You'll no longer be able to keep smiling when you want to scream, or keep silent when your truth burns your throat. And that, painful as it is the beginning of liberation. The most fascinating thing is that when you start walking this path, everything distorts. What once seemed important loses weight, and what you ignored becomes the center. The approval of others turns into background noise, and the voice you once buried begins to roar with a clarity that frightens. You discover that loneliness wasn't a void, but a weapon. A weapon that cuts all the chains you never knew you were wearing. And then you understand what Diogenes knew centuries ago. That living authentically is more uncomfortable, more solitary, but infinitely more real than living chained to others' fake smiles. And now I want you to ask yourself something, without excuses, without distractions. What would happen if you stopped trying to fit in for just one day? What would happen if you were brutally honest about what you think, even if it makes others uncomfortable? What would happen if you accepted the possibility of being alone, but with the certainty of no longer betraying yourself? I'll tell you what would happen. You'd begin to recover a freedom no one can ever take from you. And when someone criticizes you, it would no longer be an attack, but a reminder that you're alive, that your voice belongs to no one but you. This is the conclusion I want you to take with you. Society will never stop trying to mold you, but you have the power to decide whether you hand over your mind or protect it as your most sacred treasure. And now that we've made it this far, before we continue, I want to present the following to you. Our book, The Formula of Awakening, is now available. Do you feel like there's something inside you that wants to awaken, but you don't know where to start? Then I invite you to transform your way of thinking, and with it, your way of living. Discover who you can become. Start today. The link to get the ebook is in the first pinned comment of this video. Grab your copy now at a great price. With that said, let's continue with the video. The more you depend on others' judgment, the more vulnerable you'll be. The more you dare to hold yourself up in solitude, the more invulnerable you'll become. It's not an easy path, but it's the only path to real lucidity. And now that you've come this far, you can no longer look at your life the same way. Before you leave, I want to propose something. Subscribe, because here we're going to keep destroying those invisible chains that keep you on autopilot, and you won't want to miss what's coming. And in the comments, write one sentence: I prefer to be free than accepted. That will be our signal, the mark of those who no longer settle for living asleep. And now I say goodbye, but not with a farewell. I say goodbye with a challenge. Close this video and stay in silence for a few minutes. No music, no social media, no people, just you. Dare to look directly at the person you've always avoided. If you do, I assure you of something. That moment, brief as it may be, can be the beginning of a completely different life. And when you come back, the world will no longer be the same, because you will no longer be the same.